Right, President Trump and his administration are defending the Justice Department's indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. In a Truth Social post over the weekend, the president called Comey a, quote, dirty cop.
A dirty cop who helped get him elected.
Claimed FBI agents were happy.
All you have to do is just say thank you to him, I'm sure he'd
with the charges. He also thanked current FBI Director Kash Patel for his work on the case. The editors of the National Review called this, quote, the deeply flawed Comey indictment, and their piece reads in part this: the political animus that fueled the indictment against James Comey is bad, but it may pale in comparison to the incompetence of the Trump Justice Department's execution of the lawfare ordered by the president. This sorry place is where lawfare takes the nation. Trump has valid complaints that his political enemies, Comey included, abused the justice system to try and convict him, bankrupt him, and render him unelectable. But turnabout is not fair play. Turnabout is the betrayal of the president's responsibility to execute the laws faithfully. Turnabout is the president transforming James Comey into a martyr.
And make no mistake about it, that's what the president's doing. The president's turning James Comey into a martyr, just like he's made Jimmy Kimmel more popular than ever. Look at the guest list that Jimmy Kimmel has this week. It's the biggest stars in Hollywood, the biggest stars on the stage, the biggest rock stars, all going on Jimmy Kimmel's show, all because Donald Trump has made him bigger than ever before. And he's doing the same thing with Jimmy Kimmel. Turnabout is not fair play, and also turnabout ends up only helping the person you are attacking. The National Review also features a new piece by contributing editor Andrew McCarthy, who says, quote, the indictment against Comey should be dismissed. And he writes in part this, quote, Andy McCarthy, Fox News' Andy McCarthy, the vindictive indictment the Trump Justice Department barely managed to get a grand jury to approve on Thursday is so ill-conceived, Andy McCarthy writes, and so incompetently drafted, Andy McCarthy writes, he should be able to get it thrown out on a pretrial motion to dismiss. The indictment should be dismissed because there is no factual basis for a perjury charge. And as Andy McCarthy says, because the second count, obstruction, hinges on the perjury charge. I'm sure Comey would rather have a jury clear him, but this baseless case should never see a trial court. And David Ignatius, we've heard the talk, again, from the right, from the left, from people who are on Fox News, from people who are on MSNBC, for people who write for the Wall Street Journal, for people who write for the New York Times, left and right, just saying that this is a bogus case and it is lawfare. The only intention is he wants payback and he wants to make Comey pay. And when you see people like the vice president going out there saying they're based on law, I mean, it's ridiculous. They know they're lying. And the question is, when they're promising more of this, where does it take the country? Where does it take the White House? Where does it take the Justice Department?
So, Joe, I think the reaction that you're citing from people on the left and the right to the Comey indictment shows that this really is, to an unusual extent, a direct political prosecution led by President Trump, who has openly called on his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to pursue his political enemies. In this case, you had a very experienced U.S. attorney in Virginia refuse to bring the indictment. That person was fired. You had misgivings, were told within all of the senior career people in that district against bringing the case. A novice was brought in who would present the indictment to a grand jury. By news accounts, her performance was what you would expect from somebody who had no experience.
And joining us now is MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian and MSNBC legal analyst, former Manhattan Assistant DA Catherine Christian. Catherine, just based on Monica's breakdown, what we know right now, do you see anything that would warrant an investigation into Christopher Wray, let alone potential charges?
No, it appears, again, this is yet another person who is on an enemies list, to borrow the Nixon's phrase, and let's just investigate whether or not there's probable cause of the crime has been committed. It seems, the president said justice. It seems like it's more of a payback for perceived wrongdoing.
And so, no, they're there, at least on the surface. We'll keep track of that. We're also getting fresh reaction to the James Comey indictment. Here's just the latest from Republican lawmakers.
James Comey lied to Congress. Okay, he took an oath. He said things to Congress that were simply not true. It's called perjury.
This isn't about what he did to the president. It's about lying to Congress and obstructing justice. And that's what he was indicted for.
I believe he withheld exculpatory information from the court because he wanted Trump to be found guilty. I think there's a conspiracy charge that could be made.
Ken, I have to wonder, what kind of a test case was this for the Trump administration, this Comey indictment? And is this the reaction they expected, which is very little blowback?
I think so, because, look, their base has been marinating in these conspiracy theories for years that James Comey was part of a deep state plot to unseat Donald Trump. And you heard Lindsey Graham there. He wasn't actually talking about the underlying case, the perjury case that they brought against Mr. Comey. He's talking about some other thing regarding the Russia investigation, which he is obsessed with, and which an inspector general has found was essentially, with some mistakes by the FBI, properly predicated and reasonably brought. And so, yeah, I think obviously a lot remains to be seen about how this plays out in court. So we don't know yet what lessons the Trump Justice Department is going to learn from this. If they are completely repudiated by a judge, they could learn a different kind of lesson on it.
Now, we're also hearing from Trump White House Special Counsel Ty Cobb, as well as former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, weighing in on this Comey case over the weekend. Let's listen to that.
The top count, actually, in the indictment approved 2, but by a very slim margin, 14 out of 23, in a process where there's no defense attorney in the room and the standard is merely probable cause. The next courtroom that this will be assessed in, if it gets to trial, requires unanimity from 12 people, and there will be a vigorous defense. I don't see any way in the world that, Comey will be convicted.
It is possible, since the prior U.S. attorney evaluated that evidence days before and says it wasn't enough to bring it to a grand jury, it's very possible that a judge could come to the same conclusion, and that would dismiss the indictment outright, literally at its first steps.
And Catherine, we haven't heard from any legal minds that say that this indictment looks like a strong case. Do you think that it's likely this judge will dismiss the case?
I won't say it's likely, but there's a strong chance. Mr. Comey says he wants a trial. I think his lawyers will file a motion to dismiss the indictment
this past week. And so you hear all of these stories, and you can't help but say, wait a second, is there something he doesn't want us to be talking about?
Yeah, Joe, it's interesting. You kind of read my mind, because not only is this a loser on so many levels, it's a loser with the American public. Right now, but every minute that Trump spends on, this weaponization of the Justice Department, you're not spending on the consumer, you're not spending on the voter. And voters have a way of going, what about me? Wait a second. So not only is it a head fake to get people to not be talking about these things, I think it hits people in the gut and they go, this is not what I want my government to be doing. I want them focusing on the economy. I want them focusing on ending wars. I want them focusing on getting tariffs right. And I think the voter, I think this ends up, we've talked about many ways this backfires, about making your enemies martyrs, by it swings back the other way, and all of a sudden Democrats get in power and they're using the same tactics. We've talked about so many ways that this is wrong. It's wrong for the voter. And I think that may show up in the polls at some point.
I think Democrats and Republicans, Mika, have got to figure out, with the White House, with Congress, we've got to figure out how to bring this to an end. Because George Will wrote about it this past week. If Republicans don't think there's a progressive out there that's looking at everything that Donald Trump's doing and going, when I get in power, because, Republicans are supposed to be for small government. Progressives openly say they're for big government. They want the government to be bigger and more powerful. And so you're looking at a Republican doing this? And they're not going to, this whole bit about, oh, we're just paying them back. You need to look and see how much the far left hated Merrick Garland, how much progressives loathed Merrick Garland because they said he didn't go fast enough. He waited too long. Mm-hmm. He dragged his feet. He was too deliberative. They said the same thing about Joe Biden. It's all on Twitter. It's all on X. It's all out there. You can have your conspiracy theories. You can have whatever. You can live in your own little bubble if you want to live in your own little bubble. But progressives were angry at Merrick Garland because he didn't go fast enough. And so I'm looking at all of this that is happening, Mika, and I'm just saying the precedents that are being set are so dangerous for people working in the administration right now, for people working in past administrations, future administrations. I'm telling you, Republicans and Democrats have to. This isn't kumbaya, all right? This is, let's keep this country together.
Yeah, keep it between the lines.
It's been a pretty damn good run for the past 249 years. I'd like my kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to have a couple hundred years more of this. But we've got to stop this. We've got to bring both sides together. Both sides are thinking it's the other side's fault. But it's everybody's.
Historian
it's everybody's
John
fault.
Meacham.
They got to get together.
You can see as this Trump attack on Comey continues to unfold, everyone seems united in calling it BS, both from a political perspective, like what this means, what it's about, because Trump has made it clear it's about vengeance, it's about revenge, it's about quote-unquote retribution. Remember, he said, I will be your retribution for the people. And we all knew what he meant was, I'm just going to get my enemies, right? Maybe some of his dumb supporters, I'm sorry to call them that, but they are, some of them at least, right? Thought he meant that they were going to get back at the people that were making their lives harder. He was going to get back at the people who made prices expensive and all of that. Of course, he was never going to do that because the people who make prices expensive are the people who have memberships at Mar-a-Lago, right? Like the capitalist class, right? But the point is, like, we knew he was just going to have an enemies list, like a Nixon style, here are my enemies, and I'm going to go down the list one by one to get them all any way I can, whether it's in the courts or whether it's through policy or whether it's through sicking my supporters, like whatever. But it's not working this time. It's not working. And much like with Kimmel, he bit off more than he could chew. He went too hard, too fast, and people snapped back, right? With Kimmel, he went too hard, too fast. With Colbert, maybe there was plausible deniability where the show was just not getting renewed. And the pressure was softer. With Kimmel, it was direct. People reacted with shock and horror and anger, and they fought back. And you're seeing much the same here with Comey. You're seeing experts. You're seeing former judges, former trial lawyers, people who might not comment on active cases usually because, you know, they want to be professional about it and say, well, it's an active case. I don't want to comment on a case that I'm not working on because it's, you know, I don't want to give an unexpert opinion. But this is so egregious, they feel compelled to speak because the entire profession seems to be lining up against Trump.